Hello. I'd like to introduce you to a very complex thing I made about a silly bird I like to draw. This is Ka'aw. He's a cartoon, a raven, a father with a septum piercing, an academic, and my creation. He grew up on the blackboards of Oberlin College, Peters 104 to be exact, when I miraculously had 3 classes in the same classroom in the spring of 2022. He met his mate Kriok, learned about plot devices and linguistics, and ended the semester in a tree with an egg and the love of his very short and fictional life. I kept my own role secret. What did I have to gain from revealing who was drawing him? He felt so much more autonomous this way. That fall I drew him again. He spread to other nearby buildings as my classes allowed, and over the course of the year he had his son Croc and watched him take his first flight and eventually leave. Ka'aw had grown along with me, his design becoming easier and easier to draw as I did it over and over again in different classrooms on my college campus. I told everyone who saw me draw him to keep his illustrator secret. I thought it was fun. So, looking towards my graduating semester, I wanted to do something special for him. Welcome to the Ka'aw ARG. If you don't know what an ARG is, it's an alternate reality game where clues are seeded out into the world and players solve puzzles to unlock more narrative, often changing the story with their actions. I've loved puzzles for a while. I taught a student-led class called Puzzles and Immersive Narratives for 2 semesters, after all. It was the perfect amount of experience to convince me that I had the skills to make one without actually knowing how much work it would take. The first step was brainstorming. It needed to be meta. Ka'aw is a cartoon and knows he's a cartoon, but I had to figure out exactly what kind of meta I wanted to go with. I settled on a cross between the SCP Foundation and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where Ka'aw will have gained sentience and the sinister Canon Control Agency, that's canon with 1 N as in canonical, will have him trapped and the players would help him escape. Perfect. Now for all those pesky puzzles. Puzzles are finicky things because to some degree they're just raw game design, though if they were, they would just be math and probability. What makes puzzles fun, at least to me, is their theme and the act of solving. No one likes a puzzle that doesn't make sense, either because it's too easy or too hard, or because it doesn't match the theming. I'm a creative writer at heart, so the theming came naturally for the most part. It helped that I decided early on that Ka'aw would transition from analog to technological over the course of the game, from blackboards to posters and posters to website, and from there the sky's the limit. The actual hard part was the puzzles themselves, engaging the player's skill level without knowing who would be playing. I had a general idea because there had been other ARGs on campus in the past, but Ka'aw wasn't a known character. There was another thing. I felt an obligation to keep Ka'aw's autonomy alive. The story was about that too, of course, but that's fiction layered on top of him. He's more than this story. Writers will know this. Characters live and breathe. I had decided. I wasn't going to advertise the ARG. At all. The beginning. The first week. Well, that didn't work. Here's what the problem was. No one knew it was an ARG. I drew Ka'aw on a bunch of blackboards and whiteboards with a link to the Discord next to him and some cryptic but endearing messages. A few people joined the Discord, but no one was doing anything. They had no prompt. Mistake number 1. No engagement. Guess what? There's a reason why ARGs are advertised despite them being full of mystery, intrigue, and story crumbs. It's not because that isn't enough to get people interested. Of course they're interested, but they have no way of taking action on that interest. The original schedule for the ARG had 1 puzzle coming out every week, with the first week blank, because surely just seeing Ka'aw would drag them into my little world. This misconception came about because of the way that Ka'aw was created in the first place. He appeared out of nowhere, and the professors and other students were acknowledging him and remarking on what he was saying each day. This encouragement, though they didn't know it was encouragement, was what had convinced me that people liked Ka'aw on his own merits. I had forgotten that A, that built up over multiple weeks of drawing Ka'aw for my own enjoyment before realizing that other people liked him as much as I do, and B, an ARG is different from just doodling on the blackboard, even if the doodles did have an overarching narrative. All of this led to the creation of the first puzzle, from the player's point of view, a small scavenger hunt for a 3D printed coin with a raven and the letters CCA on it. At the edge of your compass, a northern star. Take to the skies, it'll bring you far. There's a short poem that was split into couplets and scattered among the Ka'aw drawings. The players only found 2 lines of it, but that didn't matter in the end. A small band of intrigued friends and people from the Discord followed the instructions and discovered the coin on the complete opposite side of campus from Peters. Little did they know that it was foreshadowing a later puzzle, in its form. I didn't want it to be foreshadowing, but a scavenger hunt is relatively easy to do compared to what was to come, and Zach, the Discord moderator I had planted, had a 3D printer. The middle. The website. The next step were posters and the website they linked to. I had started working on the website first of all the puzzles because it was the thing I had the least experience with. and by that I mean no experience. Thankfully, I had access to WordPress and began getting all the pages in place. This took forever, and I was left with only 3 days, a weekend, to finish the whole website, puzzles and all. I had commissioned music from a friend, Richard Fukuda. You should listen to his music. It's great. And getting 2 of the 3 songs into the website required trial and error with different WordPress modules that weren't all honest with what they could actually do. Even once they were in place, I was still left with all the puzzles to fill out. Mistake number 2. Bad priorities. What I should have done is come up with the puzzles first and then wrap them in the website. That is not what I did. Because I was partially using this as an excuse to learn WordPress, I was immersed in what I was learning and got carried away. That was stacked on top of another project I was also working on in January that required me to be accountable to other people, and everything combined meant that the website's tabs sat collecting dust at the back of my computer. The website also had to wait while I scrambled to fix the mess of the first week. Have I mentioned it was the first week of the spring semester too? Yeah, it was, and when I was finally able to get back to it, I was running off of slow-acting adrenaline from stress and some shaken self-confidence. There were 5 passwords that the players needed to find. The first 2 were to enter the employee version of the site, and the last 3 were to release Ka'aw from the CCA's immediate grasp. Relatively simple, right? Wrong. The first password is actually simple. There's a word search on Ka'aw's page of the website that contains the password and can be easily found after eliminating a few other possibilities. The second password was a last-minute decision after I realized I don't understand how to convert music into letters properly. What was supposed to happen was that the players would type in the notes of the first couple seconds of Ka'aw's theme song, since in this story he was the main character of an educational show for middle schoolers, and all would be well. However, I don't have perfect pitch, and the music, while sounding exactly how I wanted it to, was just slightly too complicated to put through one of the music analyzers online. I had tried the second option, and the result is what the players were up against for the first few hours. I was busy, and I had classes to attend, but the problem quickly became apparent as the players went off the deep end, teaching themselves how to read a spectrogram and trying out sharps and flats that weren't there. I ended up picking one of our answers, the one I was actually going for, and couldn't figure out with the tools I had available, lowercased it, and replaced it as the answer. Am I proud of this? No. Did it work? Yes, though the players still needed some hints, of course given through the Discord moderator, Zach. Mistake number 3. Not asking for help. It's bad enough that I didn't just turn around and ask Richard, the person who had actually made the music, what the notes were, but I wasn't in any sort of headspace for introspection. But first, they got a spike of intrigue, as they were finally allowed access to the employee version of the website, including a big red release button. This is something that I did right, giving them a clear goal and a distinct pile of clues to sort through. The third password, and the first of the release sequence, was maybe a bit too easy, since the only clue on the page was a very dark image and everyone knows what to do with a very dark image. The fourth password, second of the release sequence, was quite a bit more complicated. This seems to be a pattern. Regardless, this is where I should have asked for help. I wanted to make a layered cipher. I love ciphers, and I hadn't really gotten to push one to its limits yet. Considering that the next part of the ARG was going to be primarily visual, this was my chance. I collected a bunch of ciphers I thought looked cool, picked a short, story-relevant phrase to put at the center, slapped them together, and pasted it into the website. That's ignoring the enormous amount of sleep deprivation and stress I was under, as it was the last thing I did before putting up the posters and releasing the website to the public. I did not understand the ciphers I was working with. 2 were just conceptually out of my reach and required hints that I hadn't given because I looked them up on Decode and copy-pasted between the different ciphers until it made just enough puzzle sense that I could let go of it without imploding. I had tossed an alphanumeric cipher on top of everything because one cipher worked with words and another worked with numbers, leading to what appeared to be 2 different ciphers, one that went from numbers to letters and another that went from letters to numbers. This meant that the players only applied the alphanumeric cipher to part of it, causing unnecessary confusion. Puzzles are finicky, because some confusion is good and some confusion is bad, and anticipating which type the players will experience is incredibly difficult and important. I had misjudged in my excitement around a layered cipher and my stress around the website as a whole. It was around this time that I started doubting whether it had been a good idea to do this whole project. ARGs are usually made by teams of people specialized in their respective disciplines. They are spearheaded by companies and clubs, not individuals. I was in the deep end of the pool and had looked up at the surface of the water for the first time. I couldn't step down now. There was too much at stake. The players had become invested, and I couldn't just leave them out to dry. My stress was mine to deal with and mine alone, but the ARG and Ka'aw were bigger than me. Zach kept telling me not to do a layered cipher, and I thought it was just preference. This was my project after all, and I wanted to do it, and I wouldn't get another chance, so I put it together slapdash, sent it out, and it blew up in my face. I had to modify the website in real time with a new version of the cipher that included all the hints they needed, but it was just a band-aid on an open wound. I felt helpless. But the show must go on, right? No. I was too tired. I was too stressed. I was burnt out. Zach, could you help me? He put together a Picross that led to a rebus themed to the idea of capture in prison, what Ka'aw was experiencing. The Picross was simple enough, they got it in minutes, then got stumped on what exactly the rebus was going for. That's the fun thing with word puzzles, is that you're never quite sure what the formatting is going to be. Nearly all the passwords had been lowercase with no punctuation, but what if that wasn't the case here? And all of that. And finally, after a grueling 2 weeks of constant work from both myself and players, Ka'aw was freed. That wasn't the end of the story, but it was the end of the website. Thank goodness. I made a new Discord account with the name and profile picture of Ka'aw and got Zach to send me an invite. I had such a fun time just role-playing as this bird I'd been building the character of for the past 2 years, and the players were happy to finally be able to ask him questions. At one point, he escaped the channel he was supposed to stay in, even though I had admin access to monitor everybody, obviously, and had a conversation with Zach one-on-one that he screenshot as proof that it happened, because of course Ka'aw would play around with the rules like that after being confined for so long. The stress died down, though not completely, and the next phase could begin. The climax. The Instagram. A few days after Ka'aw had been freed, I updated the last page of the website to include a link to an Instagram I had made in Ka'aw's name. I had posted 3 images, with 6 more to follow, of places around campus. I'd sewn little blue fabric bags and filled each with a piece of a QR code and a trinket of sorts for the players who found it to keep. These ranged from a plastic coin to a set of defunct keys, bought, not stolen, and a little raven skull to a tiny metal dandelion. The players picked up on this right away, and I finally had some time to breathe as I released sets of 3 pictures until they finally had the full 9, corresponding to the 9 QR code pieces that they would have put together. This led them to an image, an invite, really, to Peter's 104 at a specific day and time, though they didn't know the significance of the location. That was just for me. For once, it went as expected, and both me and the players were having fun. I wonder what's about to happen. Mistake number 4. Scheduling. Zach was doing backflips to keep the players on schedule, since I needed to find the QR codes before the date and time in the image it encoded. When I had made the QR code, split it up and distributed it around campus, I hadn't known that there was a difference between dynamic and static QR codes, and had made a static one, meaning that I couldn't change the date or time after it was sent out. Zach eventually had to tip the scales until one person agreed that they could go pick up the last piece and combine it with the other QR code pieces later when there were more people available, which gave them just 2 days of buffer. It probably seemed like a reasonable wait to them, but on the other side of the screen it was an agonizingly close call. Amidst all of this, I was working on the finale last minute, as I'm wont to do. The end. The animation. I made the decision that the finale would be an animation of Ka'aw thanking the players for helping him and then flying off into the sunset at the very beginning of the process, back in the brainstorm phase. How do you make an image more alive other than animating it? It's in the name. I had animated before, so I wasn't going into it with absolutely no experience at all, like I did with WordPress, and therefore left it to the last minute when I knew I would feel pressured enough to do it but still have enough time to make it the way I wanted to. There were still problems. The biggest one was that I had gotten a new computer since the last time I'd animated, and the old program Flipbook didn't work anymore. On top of that, the company that made it, Digicel, was in the middle of transitioning to one program for all devices, meaning that they weren't making new versions of Flipbook that would function with newer computers. They were looking for beta testers for their new all-devices thing, though, and after only 1 email, I was on the list and had the app downloaded. Yay! This also meant that I would have to relearn how to animate somewhat, since the workflow I remembered wouldn't work with the new formatting, ignoring the bugs and bare user face I had to work with on top of that. It was surprisingly smooth, despite some hiccups with going full screen and meshing my drawing tablet with it, and in no time I had made a test animation of Ka'aw. Ka'aw was originally not going to have a voice, since he'd only ever spoken through text before, but he didn't feel alive enough without it, especially since the finale was mostly him standing there and talking. And what better way to give yourself extra work than to match mouth movements to sound? I messaged an old friend and asked if he would be willing to voice Ka'aw, since he had that sort of soft nasal sound that Ka'aw would undoubtedly have as an academic bird. I got multiple takes from him and spliced them together to get the tone I wanted. I put it over the 3rd song and Ka'aw's theme as necessary for the moment, and I was finally ready. I made the whole finale animation over the course of 4 days, and I don't regret a single moment. I hadn't done a long animation in quite a while, and I'd forgotten how much I liked doing it. By all rights, it should have done the same thing to me that the website had done, but instead I kept wondering what I could embellish it with, like little eye movements and wing motion to match Ka'aw's big emotions. I had drawn Ka'aw so many times at this point that the animation came easily. It helped that the mouth movements were just a lot of copying and pasting existing mouth shapes. Closed, open, big open, tongue visible, etc. I exported it and stuck it in a USB with a 1-word password the day before the actual finale. Day of, I left the USB in Peter's 104, wrote an easy hint to the password on the blackboard, and got set up on the 2nd floor, anxiously waiting to get the text from Zach that the video was almost over. As soon as I did, I rushed downstairs and opened the door to find a small group of players poring over one of their computers, the credits rolling behind them. I couldn't stop smiling. It was wonderful. They loved it. I loved it. After. I can't stop thinking about Ka'aw. I still have his Discord account, his Instagram. I could do anything I want with him. I'm not drawing him in any of my classes because doing that on top of the ARG would have been a nightmare, but now I miss him. I created him, told his story, and set him free. It feels wrong to want him back. I think I'll draw him one last time for my graduation. But after that, I don't know. He doesn't belong to me anymore in the same way he did back in Peters 104 the first time around. Yet I care about him deeply. He changed what I think I can do. I don't care how many glaring mistakes this ARG had, or how stressed I was during certain parts of it, or if it didn't make any sense in the first place to make an ARG as pretty much a single person, with some notable helpers. I loved doing it. I didn't have many players in the end, but those who were there will know what it felt like as Ka'aw said goodbye. And I thank all the players and everyone who helped me make this a reality. Ka'aw is more than me. He's more than this story. I don't care that you know that I'm his author and illustrator. He might be my creation, but he is not mine, and in the end my role doesn't make much of a difference to his. So I'd like you to say goodbye to a very complex bird I like to draw.